Are you ready to go? We are. This is the Convo. Norm in London, Mike in Cheektowaga. Wow. The Maple Leafs over the last, 72 hours and maybe even a week back under renovation, and not just a simple renovation. This is some serious stuff. Out. Sandin, Anderson, Engvall, in. O'Reilly, Achari, McCabe, Lafferty, Gustafson, Shen. Holy shit! OG's conference. What is up? The Leafs at the Oilers tonight will focus in on all of these changes and perhaps more changes to come before the deadline on Friday, March 3rd. Mr. Augello, good evening.
Good evening, Norm. I'll slightly dispute with the renovation analogy because honestly, okay, they've subtracted two everyday players in Sandin and Engvall, and both of them after the fact for draft picks to recoup draft capital. Joey Anderson was mostly a Marley, so he really doesn't factor in. Neither is Adam Gaudet or Pavel Gogolev. Those players are inconsequential. This is an addition. This is like you have a house and you're building an extra room on it. That's what this basically is. They are accumulating
renovations, Mike.
Well, they're accumulating assets without subtracting significantly from the core.
Everybody thinks the Leafs are going all in, Mike. That's the impression. Optically, you have to make that argument. The Leafs are going all in. This is the most active Kyle Dubas has been.
Yes.
And it's awesome.
I'm not saying it's not awesome, but I am saying that it's, I think, characterizing it as this, the one, I heard somebody being concerned about chemistry. It's like, okay, well, if they were trading out bodies, big bodies, trading Nylander, trading Riley, trading, those, look what's going on in LA right now with Jonathan Quick being traded. It was a gut punch. Everybody hates the general manager right now. Right now in Toronto, all they're doing is adding to the existing group. Now they have so many options. And, I'm not going to go back and legislate the O'Reilly deal, but the O'Reilly deal was the first one. It was, 2 weeks ago. And, we can see already how he has sort of acclimated himself to the roster.
In your eyes, from what you've seen, how has he done that? Encapsulate that.
I think he's played well. But I also think that he is playing in a position that in the end he is not going to play. They kept him. They put him in the second line. He's playing well with Tavares and with Marner. But I do think when game one of the Stanley Cup playoffs starts, he's going to be the third line center and Tavares will be in the middle. Because the whole reason for acquiring him is to lengthen their lineup against a very deep Tampa lineup.
Right. And if you are going deep into a playoffs and you are worth your weight in contendership, you need a guy like O'Reilly, not on your first line, second line. You need him on third line. So this is the way to integrate him, and then you spread it out.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I agree. And the sneaky part of the McCabe deal,
okay,
included Lafferty, is the fact that they got Chicago to retain 50%. He's got 2 more years at $2 million. Lafferty's got another year at $1.1 million. The Leafs have a ton of unrestricted free agents at the end of this year. Right. And they have to think about that. They have to think about fielding a roster next year. So having 2 guys with term on their deals and not really heavy cap hits I think a big factor. Plus the addition of McCabe made Rasmus Sandin expendable. I didn't particularly like moving out a 22-year-old defenseman who I think has a lot of talent. There are a lot of people who think
it was either him or Liljegren. You know that, Mike. If they had to go, it was Sandin.
Right, but I still don't see. The thing is that right now
they're not Salming and Lidstrom, right? So
no, but okay, you have to think about going forward. What's going on with the team, and you have to say, okay, Sandin was somebody who was under control for 3 more years after this year, and you're right. Your left side of your defense is Morgan Riley, who's locked up long term, Jake McCabe, who's locked up for another 2 years, and a 39-year-old Mark Giordano, who has not slipped at all. Still a very effective player. But, I mean, how long can he – I mean, he did an interview with Jeff Merrick and Elliot Friedman, says he wants to play. If they win a Stanley Cup, he may retire, but if he may want to play another 2 or 3 years, and I'm sure he'd probably play for the same amount that he's playing for right now because he wants to stay in Toronto. But the whole part of it is the left side of the blue line now is a little shallow because they've traded Sandin. But
so many people want the Leafs to go all in. They've had enough of this bullshit. Future. There will always be a future. And if you're creative and you're smart, and again, there are picks. And again, this idea of, well, every year we've got to go into a draft as if we're picking a top flight prospect every single year. You can't have both, man. Like at the end of the day, give me an example of a team that can do it both ways, wins cups and drafts top guys in the first part of the first round who are bona fide A1 guys. No team can do that, Mike.
The Tampa Bay Lightning.
You know what? A lot of people think they're going to get pumped in the first round because they look old and tired. Yeah, they have a great goaltender, but there are a lot of people out there, and a lot of OGs in Converse think they're going to get pumped. They think their time is maybe not necessarily done, but for this run, the Leafs are going to finally, put an absolute expiry on this group and take their leap. And that's why Kyle Dubas is doing things to strengthen this group. Clearly, there's a sense of urgency here, Michael P. Augello from Cheektowaga, New York, USA.
Yeah, from your mouth to God's ear, but I just think that, until I see it, I won't believe it. And I think, this is a team that's won 2 Stanley Cups and been in 3 straight Stanley Cup finals. So yeah, it's very possible that they, all those extra games over the last few years have worn this team down, but I think there's still a mountain, that you have to climb over. But going back to after they expended a first round pick to trade for O'Reilly and expended a future first round pick to get McCabe, what did they do? They traded Sandin to get a first round pick and Eric Gustafsson, and they got a third round pick for Pierre Engvall to clear cap space, and then they flipped a different third round pick to get Luke Shen. So
J. Paul Turner, that leads his comment is right in line with what you're talking about right now and what may be to come.
Yes, I mean, this is the thing, and we just saw it in the last few minutes. Philip Roenick, who's an offensive defenseman with the Red Wings, who's under contract for another year, I believe, or another 2 years. He just got traded to Vancouver for a first-round pick and an extra pick. Shane Gostisbehere, who was having a good year with Arizona, he just got traded to Carolina for a third-round pick. Now, Eric Gustafsson's neither one of those guys, but he's making $800,000 and he's got 38 points. I think he's sort of an extra piece. Morgan Riley's the point guy in the power play, and if Morgan Riley goes down, then a guy like Simmons or a guy like Giordano could fill in the interim. I don't think you're keeping 9 defensemen. So, and they actually have 10 because Jordy Benn's down in the minors. So I think they're going to end up trading Gustafsson and flipping him for draft picks because draft capital is important. Now, they may use that draft capital before 3 p.m. on Friday to make other deals, but I think they may make another deal to shed some salary and maybe add one more player. I'm still hoping that they add a guy like Austin Watson, a physical winger. I know some people don't like that idea. I think it's a possibility.
But then we get into, if you don't think renovations are ongoing right now, if they add an Austin Watson, then, technically you'd have to consider that's a renovation because they're adding and not necessarily too many guys off the roster, but the shuffle will mean some guys who have gotten them to this point, or at least contributed to the Leafs getting to this point, will be the odd men out. J. Paul Turner, thanks so much for the contribution. For those listening on podcast, with 8 defensemen, I think they move Gustafsson and a pick for a winger so they can slot O'Reilly down to the third comfortably. J. Paul, the man, the myth, the magic, Michael P. Augello of HockeyBuzz.com and the Leafs Convo and whatever other podcast or platforms you were on, laid that out for us so succinctly, and we appreciate him doing so. A lot of new names in the chat. We appreciate that. Subscribership has gone bananas. So do me a favor, guys, and I pontificate. Stay. Like, don't just, well, we're subscribing for now and then we're going to leave. We've been going for a long time. We provide all kinds of content. We're very consistent. We're around. What else are the hell guys like us going to do other than talk about the Leafs, mix and mingle with you guys? And this, again, is prime time. This is content Christmas leading up to the trade deadline, leading up to July 1st. And then throughout the playoffs, the longer the Leafs go, the more you'll get from us. And we'll have an absolute blast. It's a kiss and cry when they get eliminated. And who knows what kind of kiss and cry it would be if they ever won a bloody Stanley Cup. Wouldn't that be an amazing thing? Mike, just real quick on the picks. They lost a first and 23, a first and 25, third and 23. Ottawa's third and 23, a second and 24, a second and 26, a fourth and 25. Coming back and again losing all that draft capital, you do that in order to get guys to help today, building for tomorrow. Not as much, but I mean, again, it's a balance. Boston's first and 23, the Islanders third and 24, and a couple of Chicago picks, 24, 25, both fifth rounders. And again, so you got to give something to get something. It doesn't work out perfect. And Mike and I, OG's conference, we go back. And I'm sure there's some of the older guys too. We go back to a time when nobody gave a fuck about draft picks. I mean, draft schmaft and all that kind of stuff. Nobody cared. Then 04-05 came about after the lockout. There was a salary cap, and then there were fans. A whole fandom was born that devoted to numbers and a salary cap. Not necessarily the player, but how that player, metrically and financially fit into the puzzle of money that you had available to you. And that's what got people crazy. That's what people got crazy about. For us right now, this kind of thing with all of the trades going on, despite a salary cap and despite draft capital being gone and coming back, it's fun to see trades, to see a team whether under renovation or be added to with players taking risks. This harkens back to the old days, and obviously there is still some math that has to be tabulated and figured out before these things happen. But that's why this is so amazing, and that's why this seems so out of the ordinary for somebody like Dubas, who has made moves in the past, but certainly not to this extent, Michael.
Well, if you want to simplify things when it comes to what they've done so far, Rasmus Sandin was traded for a first-round pick, the first-round pick that was traded in the OReilly deal. So just substitute the first-round pick for Rasmus Sandin. In a sense, it was Rasmus Sandin, a second and a third for OReilly and Noel Acciari. So I that sort of simplifies things a bit. Now, the thing I like is, and I thought Pierre Engvall was a very useful forward, but I can understand why the Leafs moved him, simply because he was an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year. He's one of these guys who has really frustrated Sheldon Keefe.
Right. Inconsistency,
a lot of talent, doesn't take advantage of that talent at times, but he was an effective defensive player for this team. Now, they believe that they have replaced him with some of the assets that they've acquired, like Acciari and Lafferty on the fourth line, so they could afford to shed his $2.25 million salary, because they need to activate Matt Murray. But then they flipped the draft pick, not the same one, but a third-round pick, to get Shen. I think Shen is just as impactful and just as important of an acquisition than McCabe. Or almost as much as
I agree with you. I certainly agree with you, Mike. Like, again, he moves the puck and he's defensively sound. How about somebody who takes it to the opposition, that the opposition is aware of when that individual is on the ice, because it's not just they're counting the number on the guy's back, and it's, oh shit, beware, right? Careful.
Right.
Shen's obviously Shen is I guess the hit guy in the league right now statistically, and that's his job to be cognizant of what's going on, to be sound, to be reliable, and to bring the fucking wood. Why not? The Leafs need more of those guys, and you're right. Even a younger who has a bit more capability. What Shen brings is on an equal level to what somebody with a little bit more of an array of what he offers. At this point, these things are very, very close in terms of what they can bring back and how they can affect the game positively for the Maple Leafs.
Yeah, Ryan O'Reilly referred to Luke Shen as as the human eraser, exactly like RJWI just said. And he played with Luke's brother Braden in St. Louis, and this year he's leading the NHL in hits, and it's not a stat that is being pumped up. He had 12 hits against the Leafs when they played in Vancouver. So
again, Mike, it seems so.
Yeah, I mean, apparently he's ecstatic to come to Toronto.
About for years.
Yeah, apparently he's ecstatic to come back to Toronto. So, now, and this is just esoteric here, but Jake McCabe was assigned number 2 by the Leafs. I wonder if he changes that because Luke Shen wore number 2 when he was with the Leafs before. It'll be interesting to see what he wears, but I do think, with the numbers, when game 1 comes around against Tampa, Luke Shen's in the lineup. But I just hope that Sheldon Keefe sits Justin Hall instead of Timothy Liljegren, because Timothy Liljegren is a top 4 defenseman. Mm-hmm. Justin Hall is not. But
wow, the chickens. So that's the thing. The chickens may come home to roost on number 3, right? Sheldon Keefe thinks he's fucking Bobby Orr, but Kyle Dubas, with the moves that he's made, is hinting at, hey, Sheldon, let's go have a cocktail and talk about this number 3. Justin Hall, I've been on the Hall train for the whole year, but I'm not seeing progression. There's regression there, and what I hate is when a guy still looks like a deer in the headlights. Like, take the opportunity and run with it. You're an NHLer. Why can't you develop into something that is special? Go for it, as opposed to, oh, I'm out here still. What the hell? I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off. Like, I'm glad there's more defensive options for Sheldon Keefe, and I'm there's got to be some sort of communication between the top and the bench with, hey, Hall, as much as he's been integral to what we've done so far, really, you pull him out and add a new guy in there, or slot somebody up and bring guys in like Shen and McCabe. Hall, if Hall's not on the ice, Mike, and I've said this about Nylander years ago, and I can't say this now, but if Hall's not on the ice, no one cares. Like, nothing changes, especially with Luke Shen coming in.
Yeah, but I mean, this is the thing. Shen is likely limited to being a bottom pairing defenseman, and that's fine. That's his role. That
doesn't have enough of an impact, Mike. You know that.
No, I think if he's going to play 14, 15 minutes on the bottom pairing, and he's going to be impactful because he's going to be physical, and you don't want to overextend him. Now, in
limited minutes, you think Hull might actually turn out to be a better player than what we're seeing. He's just too exposed, and which is kind of weird. Like, wouldn't you want more ice time?
Well, I mean, when a player, he is not the fastest defenseman right now at age 33. He's limited in terms of, he's a role player. He's not the Luke Shen.
Yeah, Shen's a role player. We're talking about Shen, right? We're jumping around. Hall, Shen.
No, Shen is a role player. But, and that's the thing. It's like, I mean, I don't think, he's going to all of a sudden be a top 4 defenseman in spite of him being physical. I think he's limited to playing bottom pairing, maybe with Giordano, maybe with, I don't know who, that's up, Giordano likely is going to be the bottom pairing left shot defenseman. So,
right.
But right now, and I'm just looking up as we speak here just to see what Shen's minutes in Vancouver were. And that's really meaningless in a sense because,
he's probably playing more there than he will with the.
Right. Exactly. He was playing, I think he was playing around 17 minutes a night. I can't seem to find it on NHL.com.
Mike, can you break down? So, okay, do me a favor real quick. And here's the problem here, guys. We have lots of people on podcasts who listen to this show after the fact, so they can't see the chat. Sometimes I don't refer to the chat, or I don't, explain what's going on in the chat, but refer to something in the chat. And people on podcasts, everybody complains, right? We're in the world of complainers. And then they threaten to unsubscribe. Thanks for that. And I'd recommend anybody who listens to the podcast through a platform like Stitcher or Apple or whatever it is. I don't know, come to the YouTube channel. This is where the action is at. But can you do me a favor, Mike, real quick? We won't go too much longer, another 10 minutes or so. We got 100 people in the chat and it's growing by the minute because people are like, what the hell? Real quick, how you would slot out 6 defensemen, first pairing, second pairing, third pairing, and how you think Keith will do it. Real quick.
If it's me, it would be Brody and Riley, McCabe and Liljegren, and Giordano and Shen. Keith will likely do Riley and Brody, Giordano and Hall, and McCabe and Liljegren.
Just bring up Hall, like, holy shit, you needed Anderson or something like that just to get through thinking.
He should wear number 4 like Corey Cross because that's what he is.
Oh my gosh. OG's Converts, have you hit the like button on this content or have you subscribed to the podcast? If you haven't, you are unlike so many other people who are jumping on board the good ship, the Leafs Convo. We certainly appreciate it. The community portion of the podcast has been lively. It has been amazing. And we certainly appreciate your support. But here's the thing, guys. This isn't a flash in the pan. We've been going for a long period of time. There are the doldrums of running a small weekly podcast, 1,000 views a week and another 1,000 on podcast. And we kind of go about our business. These are big times. And there are some people just discovering us now, or those coming back to us and seeing that we're still here, still committed. It's amazing, and we're just a fun community. We have a good time. Mike is the Robert Plant, and I'm Jimmy Page, if of the group, right, Mike? I'm sorry.
I don't have the hair.
Your favorites, but
I don't have the hair that Robert Plant had.
You're not as tall, and the jeans are still as tight.
Yeah, I'm not going to go any further than that.
Sorry, there was no Sarah McLachlan reference in there, Mike, and I know.
You mean Mrs. Augello, don't you mean? Yeah. Just...
you're the l'artiste Michelangelo. It worked out absolutely perfect. Jeff Curry, Mike, and Norm and Mike are awesome. Hand waving. I don't know if that's something I can understand. But there's just a lot of chat going on right now. Okay, so we're what are we? 48 hours from the trade deadline, less than that now. There so many players in, a few players out. You don't consider this a renovation. It's an augmentation at this point, just an addition, right? We'll see how Sheldon Keefe reconfigures the lines with all the new guys, who's in, who's out.
And I don't think the changes are over with. I think there's more. I think there's more to come. It's just a question of how much more. Now, I know that yesterday, when it came out that Columbus was sitting Korpisalo, there was some speculation that the Leafs might be going that the Leafs might be going for some goaltending insurance.
Right.
Maybe that's based on them being scared that Matt Murray may have a recurrence of an injury. Now, this is the thing. They did that a couple years ago, if you remember, when Freddie Anderson was hurt, adding David Rittich from Calgary for, I think it was a 3rd round pick. So is it possible? And I know that when I say this name, it rings through and it goes right to my good buddy Steve Dangle, and he would be jumping for joy at the possibility of James Reimer returning to Toronto. But if you look at like the available goaltenders out there in terms of if they were going after a 3rd string goalie or somebody who had more experience than a guy like Reimer, might make sense because I don't think it would cost them a ton. Maybe an Eric Shalgren and a lower mid-round pick. But I think it's
Does Reimer bring that Shalgren and Wall can't? Just experience?
Yeah, NHL experience, pure and simple. Playoff experience. I mean, unfortunately, playoff experience was giving up 4 goals in the third period, but
That's 2013, right?
Yeah, that was
Just
a decade.
OG's converts here. Again, this will indicate who's old enough, who's young enough. Who watched that game, 2013? And I remember that, and I had to go to Niagara Falls the next day, and I listened to the Fan 590 on the way down, and we had the kid, both kids in the back of the CRV, the drive. I didn't say a word. It was just hard. And I was working in television in those days too. So, I had to kind of report locally nights and all that kind of stuff. And when, reporting that Leaf loss was just gut-wrenching because I was I was so deep into it, Mike. You and I were doing things on Talk Shoe. It was a lot of fun. And then they blew that lead after Kadri made it 4-1. Holy shit.
But,
shit. And now I've seen Reimer's face. He's got that smile, that stupid song that was on. Holy crap, Mike, I'm starting to think it's going to happen.
Well, I don't know. I'm just saying if they decide they want goaltending insurance, that might be the inexpensive option for them in terms of, San Jose retaining 50%. So it might be that. I believe that, like I said, I think one move that they're going to make, and I can't guarantee definitely it's going to happen, but when you look at the fact that they have 9 defensemen, and Gustafsson has 38 points right now, and is a power play quarterback, and he makes $800K. There are teams that are up against the cap that would use and need a power play quarterback. I thought Edmonton might be, but Jeff Merrick said today that Edmonton wouldn't be in on it. Maybe a team like Calgary who has a chance to make the playoffs and maybe doesn't want to spend a ton of money or a ton of assets on a defenseman, but. I think he's likely to move, and then it's a question of what else.
What else would he do?
Well,
why would you just bring him on to sit around when you can parlay him in for something?
Exactly, but where I think there is a move yet to be made.
Spike.
Where I think there's a move yet to be made is up front because right now there are 12 forwards.
Right.
Wayne Simmons is in the AHL, although he'll never play an AHL game. But he cleared waivers. His salary is buried right now. So he's an extra forward when the playoffs come around. You have Bobby McMahon and Pontus Holmberg and Alex Steeves, who have played some games in the NHL. And obviously you have Matthew Nyes, who's going to likely sign with the Leafs after Minnesota's season's over with. But there's not a lot of experience other than Wayne Simmons there. And that's why I think there is the possibility if they can find a reasonably priced forward that they would add. That I keep going back to Austin Watson. My source in Ottawa says maybe they're not going to trade him now because he scored 2 goals against Detroit yesterday, and he's
going to Ottawa too, right? So
and they think they have an outside chance of making the playoffs, but I still think they're going to trade him. But there are other options out there in terms of a physical forward that they might be able to get that could be somebody that could step in, and there could be injury. I mean, if there's an injury, Pontus Holmberg is likely the first call up. But I do think that they need one more sort of nuclear weapon in their quiver, another arrow in their quiver to be able to say that they have enough depth going into the playoffs. And I think that's very possible, but it all depends how things break. It might be a deal that ends up on Friday as things get ramped up pressure wise.
Okay, so more people are in the chat, and we've got to wrap it up. So as the receivership of this show increases, we have to wind things down. But I want to kind of go through some of the comments in the chat because some of them are a beauty. Lou St. Clair, Reimer is not a bad choice at all. And again, he'd be the sentimental choice to come back if you're just adding another goaltender. And I think his connection to the fan base a lot different than Schenn's, right? Shen left kind of as a disappointment. Reimer was central to a disappointment, but I don't know if the collective, the majority of the collective would pin it on Reimer as opposed to just a complete breakdown from that team. And there are a lot of OGs and Converse in the chat right now reacting to that game in 2013 and the pain they still feel. Yeah, nice right. Spike 11. Riley going out. You wish, Fish. You certainly wish. What do we have here? Ralph Klein. Great show, guys. Loving the convo. That's a name I do not recognize. Ralph, hey, you did a great job out in Alberta. Stick around with us, and you'll do a great job supporting the podcast. We've got Tickley Oxygen. This show is awesome. You're my go-to for Leafs talk. Dangle, who? Well, everybody knows Dangle is what is he, the Michael Jordan of Leaf podcasts and stuff like that. We're really just the sixth guy on the bench. And I'm borrowing basketball phrases, but it is what it is. Mike, before we wrap up, and I just want to get a couple of things from you. So Dubas, he's getting a lot of praise right now for adjusting his focus and kind of pulling off what people perceive to be him deviating from his plan. And again, this is us making the assessment. Who knows what these cats were planning in the boardroom? It was, hey, let's get to a point, then we're going to make these changes, make these alterations, as opposed to this idea. And I've been one to propagate this, that he's just, it's all spreadsheet based and somehow it'll all work out. And now he's changing because he's panicking. Really, what do you think is going through his mind? Do you believe that he knows now that you cannot just speculate how things are going to go, and you have to react if you're not doing what you had hoped you would do? And this is a move, not necessarily a move, but this is an adjustment kind of last minute to try to right the wrongs? Or do you feel that, what, maybe this was his plan all along? The second question, and then we'll wrap up, is how the hell do you think the team is feeling about this? And don't you think seeing the moves that Dubas has made, what he is trying to do to strengthen this team, indicates to them that it's time to go all fucking in? So pull up your bootstraps, tighten your skates, get to work, show the league, show your fan base what you're made of, get out there, win some bloody hockey games, series, and go all the way and win a bloody Stanley Cup. Last word to you.
Clearly, this team needs the core group to perform when it's called upon. They've added the pieces around the support players. There's more depth. There's more sandpaper and aggressiveness. I think they still need a little more, but there is something there. There is pushback there. McCabe and Shen. O'Reilly is not an overly physical player, but he's a very good player. Achari, they've upgraded in terms of, and Lafferty as well. They've upgraded in terms of tenacity, and that was a necessity against a team. I do think Kyle Dubas, I think there was a plan in terms of making the O'Reilly move, but I really think, and I know that he said evidence to the contrary about the McCabe deal, that it wasn't in reaction to the Jeannot deal with Tampa. I think
him being that way, Mike.
I think it was.
Okay.
I think it was simply because you saw Tampa sell out to get a physical big forward to add to the group that they already had.
That's nothing. We're not here.
Say that again?
If Tampa does nothing, are we at this point right now talking about all of these players joining the good shit Maple Leaf?
I think that maybe the McCabe deal happens, but maybe they wait later and try to get the price down. Whereas I think once Tampa made that move and went all in and traded basically an entire draft to get a guy who's, making $800,000, that he saw that he was going to get outgunned, and he really had to make the move to really improve the physicality and the sandpaper and the tenacity of the team. But the thing is, managers in any professional sport have to keep their options open. So it wasn't like he was caught by surprise or caught flat-footed. He was investigating possible options to make trades, and he did. And I know that Carlo Koliakovo today on TSN radio was saying that that Spezza being as part of the group as an advisor.
Reference the comment, Mike.
What's that?
Reference the comment for the podcast listeners.
Vapsis, don't underestimate the value Spezza as special advisor could have had in helping dudes decide what they need. I agree with that. And
really,
Carlo Koliakovo, who a former Leaf, former NHLer, on TSN radio this morning was saying the same thing, that Spezza, I'm sure, has some input. And, he played on this team last year. He played on the team. He played in Game 7 against this Tampa team. And once you see – now, I'm not saying it's Spezza pulling the strings, but that's what a good management team does. They have the input of a number of different perspectives. And Spezza provides the interesting perspective of being on the ice and being with that team when things counted in Game 7. And they read off the roster of the team in Game 7. And, you had Colin Blackwell and Andre Kasha and Alex Kerfoot and Mikheyev on the second line. The team now, as compared to the team 12 months ago, is markedly better. But so is Tampa in some ways. Their defense is weaker, but their forwards, they lost Palat, but they've added Jeannot, and they've added a few other players. So, it's an evolving situation. I think, like I said, I think there are still moves to be made.
Right.
Now the question is how big. It could be something minor, like a power forward, or sorry, a physical forward, a fourth line type depth guy. It could be, Tyler Bertuzzi, who may be on the market.
Would you consider this, what's going on right now, the addition of all of these players, the subtraction of picks, and Tyler Bertuzzi or somebody of that ilk coming aboard? Would you consider it then to be a full-scale renovation? Because at this point, you're hesitant to commit to that idea as being as transforming the team the way I believe it is right now, and many do believe as well.
I mean, I think it's transformative, but I also think that if you're trading Boston's first round pick for Tyler Bertuzzi, again, you're adding to the group. You're not subtracting somebody. Now, if you have to trade Alex Kerfoot in that deal to make the money work, then you're getting to the edge of renovation, because then you've moved 3 players off your roster and you've added 6 or 7. But I can't
piece and toss it in the trash and have one of the new ones. That's a renovation.
Well, I'm just saying that right now that they're changing the landscape of this team by adding people to the core group. It's not, renovation it would have been trading one of the core group, would have been trading Nylander, and that hasn't happened. They're giving the core group eliminating every excuse that has been in the past. They're not supported. They're being over. Like, if somebody takes a run at John Tavares or somebody takes a run at Mitch Marner, somebody's going to respond on this team.
Yeah, I hope so. And that's the thing. I think that when the puck drops on the Leafs Lightning, whether it starts in Toronto or starts in North Florida, I think it's going to be a war. If you think it's just going to be ice capades, you're kidding yourself. It might be the toughest series that the Leafs play, or either team plays. And I'm all in. I'm jacked. I'm pumped. And I just like the fact that these new guys are coming in, because I wasn't content with that group that we knew 2 weeks ago. And it started with O'Reilly. I know the guy personally. I've covered the guy. I know what kind of player he is. That mindset, those are the guys that I want on this team. It's unbelievable. Trickley Oxygen, Norm, you're first overall in my heart. Back to you, brother. This is the first time I've ever mentioned your name, but it feels like we've known each other for such a long time. Now, JM may summarize how a lot of people are feeling, and it may show that we're all missing the point. All of these additions are great. Are we still confident Murray and Samsonov will be able to do what Anderson and Campbell couldn't do? That's the thing. And we've talked about how Reimer may come in. We're not bringing Carey Price in his prime to backstop a team.
Well,
Murray and Samsonov, the guys, and if one of those go down, are Shalgren and Wall going to be able to come in? Are we missing the point, Mike? And we're trying to get out of here, but it's just too good right now.
well, with a flawed average Jack Campbell, they got to Game 7 against Tampa.
Right.
He played well at some instances and he played badly in others. So I think that you're going to see in a playoff series, barring injury, you're going to see both Samsonov and Murray play. I think it's going to be a situation where, I mean, Samsonov is like 17-2-1 in Toronto. Murray has a pretty good record on the road, and he's won 2 Stanley Cups. So he has tasted that pressure, and he has been hardened in the crucible of the playoffs.
Right.
So I think you're going to end up seeing both of those goaltenders playing.
Attitude and ability. Sorry, Mike. And Mike's in Cheektowaga. I'm in London. What's the distance? 2.5 hours. We're not in the same place, so sometimes we cut each other off. It's not a matter of attitude or heart or desire. It's a matter of body and capability. And age will catch up with everyone. Justin Millett, a great point. I get people's goalie concerns to an extent, but adding 2 defensive defensemen who actually finish neutral zone checks and clear the net is something the Leafs have not had.
Yes.
Great point, JM.
I agree. And clearing the front of the net is essential in terms of, especially on the penalty kill. But 5-on-5 against Tampa with Maroon, Perry, Belmar, Jeannot, Nick Paul, Ross Colton, these bunch of knuckle dragging Neanderthals. I mean, it's
let's go, Mike. I'm all for it, man.
Yeah, the problem is we have to wait 6 weeks.
Yeah, we have to wait 6 weeks. So let the Leafs just need to season, and after March 3rd, it'll take a load off. We'll know who they have, and then who knows what the hell happens between now and the beginning of the playoffs. A bunch of guys could get hurt. We may have an unsung hero that all of us are not considering or overlooking. Hopefully that's not the case, and all the dudes that Kyle Dubas has brought in will pay dividends for him. Because guys, OG's Commerce, like, how great would this be? Late spring, like late May, June, the Leafs deep into an Eastern Conference final, and we're all here on a late Friday night after a win going into Game 7, and there's hundreds of people in the chat. Mike's tan is starting to develop, and here I am crushing Muskokas, chatting, the kids upstairs freaking out, my wife trying to contain things. But we're talking Maple Leafs. How exciting would that be? I'm getting goosebumps, Mike.
And I'm showing the 56-inch pythons. Yeah, okay.
Okay there, Hulk. We better get out of here. I wanted to give a shout out to Mark Dick. He's been killing it in the chat, nearly banned a few times, going at everybody. He's the kind of guy the Leafs need. If Mark Day and his comments and the way how aggressive he is and how integral and how passionate he is could be translated into a hockey player, him and his long-lost cousin Alexandra.
Yeah, I was gonna say Mark is the illegitimate son of Alexander Dag. That's where he goes.
Son? Jesus. Is he like, what would Alexander's son be, like 12? We can't have kids like that. In the chat. Chef Tricks, great stuff, great combo, boys. When's the next one? I don't know. When is the next one? If there's a big deal.
Sunday, probably Sunday.
Mike's done. Mike's
no.
Wants to put on his slippers and watch reruns of
I have to watch
what?
I have to watch
San Francisco.
I have to watch season 8 of Blue Bloods. No, but no, I think there's going to be another deal. I don't think it's going to be a major deal. I think the odds of them doing a Bertuzzi deal, or somebody suggested Max Domi or JVR or anything of that kind of major consequence, I think is very low. But I do think that they're going to shed a salary in Gustafsson for draft picks, and maybe they add a physical forward to improve their depth up front. But that's about it. That's what I expect. But hey, I didn't expect 3 trades in one day, so maybe we're talking tomorrow.
I try leaving it with you, and then more people jump into the chat, and it's great. We're having a lot of fun. Last question. Is Kyle Dubas dealing for his job?
Well, it's funny because I've heard conflicting information on that. Like, okay, last week Steve Simmons said he thinks that even if they lost in the first round, that Dubas.
And that's optimism from Mr. Simmons. You know that.
Yeah, that even if they lost with the job, and this is before he made all these other deals, that he would be back. Now I've heard to the contrary, that he is, singing for his supper, and that they have to win, and that, if it was up to Shanahan, he would have been signed to a contract, but the MLS and E board are like, okay, we need this guy to win. We need this team to win. They're owned by Sportsnet and TSN, and they want the ratings.
Going anywhere.
They want the ratings. So the funny thing is, if they lose in the first round, it could be a clean sweep. It could be Dubas. It could be Keefe. And then you're going to have a new general manager and a new coach next year. And why?
Wow.
So, and sorry, Shifty, you may dislike Steve Simmons, but the guy has been in the Toronto market for 30 years. He has connections. He knows what he's talking about. And if he's being told that, he's reporting it. You can think he's a clown. He's not a clown.
Right.
You can not like his opinions, but
let's not shift to Shifty, okay? Shifty's a great guy, and we appreciate him being here, but who gives a fuck? Like, at the end of the day, you need an eclectic mix of media. If you think this is bad, go to New York.
Go
to London, England. This is bullshit child's play. And a guy like Steve Simmons with a shitty, crappy sweater on, asking tough questions to Kyle Dubas or Kevin Gosman or one of these dudes. Like, who cares? This is what you need. You need something that's a little outside of the box, right? And people hate on that guy, but sometimes they're onto things. I think that Kyle Dubas, this process and everything that's gone on has changed him and changed the look he can give off to the brass. And that, hey, listen, man, I understand that analytics are big and everybody should be using them, but they're not the only thing. And at a time like this, fuck your analytics. We are trying to get somewhere that we haven't been before, and it's getting tired. It's getting tired. It really, really is, because at some point in the near future, Matthews is going to have to be re-signed, or they're going to have to kind of rethink him. Marner at some point too. Tavares and Nylander. These cats aren't going to be together forever, and those are your core four. And just to kind of summarize everything again, Mike, if those four dudes kind of blow a collective wheel in the playoffs, then the next step that Kyle Dubas is going to have to make is to reassess what he's got in those guys. Big game tonight in Edmonton. Expect Connor McDavid to get 9 points.
With Jack Campbell in goal, expect the Leafs to score 10 goals.
Hey, don't disrespect 97, man. Come on.
I'm not disrespecting McDavid. I'm disrespecting Jack Campbell.
Right. We've got to get out of here. If something big happens, we'll be back before Sunday. If not, we should probably give it a rest, let the content season, and we'll see you Sunday. OG's conference, you know what it is, Sunday morning. A lot of new people to the conversation. Sunday mornings is when we go. The hangover doesn't really wear off, but I can finally get out of bed around 9:30. We usually do around 10 o'clock. We do anywhere between a half hour to an hour. We have a lot of fun. In the meantime, like the content. We appreciate, Mike and I don't have a sponsor right now. We do this for free. And again, we do this out of the goodness of our hearts for you guys. So like the content, subscribe to the channel. That helps put us on a higher ranking within YouTube's algorithm. So we get more exposure, more hits. Watch the commercials. I know they suck. I hate the commercials when I'm watching my own content. I'm like, what the fuck is this shit? And then I'm like, oh, wait. Maybe it's like 6 cents for Mike and I. Again, we don't come at you with Patreon. We're not asking you to support us just through donations. We just do this content for fun, but a couple of bucks here and there through promotions and through advertising and commercials on YouTube will help, because every penny does count for all of us. So help us out that way. That's all we'll ask. And in the meantime, you have our commitment. Mike and I will continue to provide content all the way up through the very last game of the season. And if the hockey gods are listening, and they're merciful enough It'll be after a game 5, 6, or 7 of the Stanley Cup, and these bastards in blue and white will be hoisting a cup, and we will do literally a 5-hour show that night. So you have our pledge. In the meantime, have fun watching the Oilers game, Mr. Augello. Hope all is well in Cheektowaga, New York, and we'll get together soon, okay? Oh, thanks so much. We are out.